Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning. Good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And we're going to have so much fun today talking to a fellow C-suite network person. That's always a lot of fun when I get to do that. But we're going to be talking about how to be healthy, both kind of in your heart and in your head, because I firmly believe that it doesn't matter what we do with our business. We can have the greatest website in the world, the greatest marketing, the greatest product, but if it's not right in our heart and in our head, it's not going to make any difference in the world. So please join me in welcoming Tina Greenbaum to our program today. Welcome, Tina.
Well, thanks, Deb. Thanks so much for having me. I'm
Great.
delighted.
Well, let me tell people a little bit about you, and then we will dive into this. So Tina Greenbaum, who has a master in education and is a licensed clinical social worker, is the founder and CEO of Mastery Under Pressure, a management consulting coaching program for high-performing executives who need to refine and master their interpersonal and interdepartmental skills. Mastery Under Pressure gives CEOs and senior level managers the additional professional and personal tools they need to excel and to empower their teams and their associates. So again, Tina, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Great. Well, I always like knowing about how my guests got to where they are today. So tell us about that journey and how you discovered that this is your passion in life.
Well, it's a long journey, actually. I've been doing this for 38 years.
Okay. You started when you were 2.
I did start when I was 2, and somebody asked, I was in a conference one time and they said, how old were you when you started helping people or caring about people? And we all went, kind of about yay big. So it's been my nature forever to be a helper person. I see problems and I love to solve them. And so I started out as a teacher. I always wanted to be a teacher, actually. Especially when I was growing up, you were either a teacher or a nurse.
Right.
And I hate the sight of blood. So teacher worked really well, but it truly is my nature. But then I got to be a teacher of elementary school, special ed. And I really hated it. I thought I hated teaching, but I really didn't hate teaching. I just wasn't cut out to teach science and English. Bulletin boards and all that. But there was a social worker and a psychologist that would used to come into the classroom and take the kids out and work with the families and work with the psychologies. I think that's what I want to do. So I went back to school and I started out with a master's in education. That wasn't it. I didn't want to work in a school. And then I went to social work school and I wanted to be a psychotherapist.
Okay.
Because what I love about psychotherapy is it's a privilege. It's a privilege to get to the deep roots of what's really going on. I love organizational development, but I don't have that same permission as I do as a therapist. So that's how I started. My first job was working on an eating disorders unit, Washington, D.C. It was one of the first in the country. Eating anorexia, bulimia were new terms, and nobody really knew how to treat them.
Right.
Gave us a manual. It said alcoholism, crossed it out, but eating disorders. Said to us beginning therapists how to deal with, they didn't know how to deal with these very, very sick young women. So the first clue I got was I went to a yoga class for myself, and I got into that deep state of relaxation. I said, wow, if I could only get those young women to do this, then maybe they wouldn't need their eating disorder. Because in my experience, all addictions are anxiety-based. And they're always about feelings that we don't want.
Right.
Those two characteristics. I started kind of getting into this mind-body, psycho-spiritual way of working with people and working with spiritual healers. And I found that my work was beginning to change. It was starting to become much more effective because I knew that I needed to get below the neck. Because we could talk, and this has a lot to do with where we're going with this stuff. But I used to say to the young women, I hear you, but I don't feel you. If I don't feel you, you're not going to change. And so my journey was really about, how do I get below the neck? How do I access the deeper parts of somebody? And basically, how do I access the unconscious?
Right. Kind of their soul.
Exactly. And also how change happens, because just talking about it doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to change at a fundamental level, because the body gets triggered, the mind gets triggered. So I kind of, again, was following my nose, and how do I get there? And now, somatic therapy, body therapy, the neuroscience explains so many things that I had to discover on my own. And now that we have the neuroscience, it becomes a lot easier to talk to people who think some of this stuff is kind of woo-woo or crazy. It's so not. I am so not woo-woo. I'm very grounded, but it works. And so what I discovered is that if you begin to follow the way the universe works, the way nature works, the way human psyche works, life works. Come up against it, when you buck up against it, you will have issues that we have. And so little by little, I started to incorporate programs and do workshops and test things out. I was always the guinea pig. I took many trainings in how do I actually help somebody change. And over the years, I just started to move over to, I'm a very coachy therapist. I'm a teacher at heart. So a coach is a teacher. And I started to develop it's great that you can tell me this stuff, but what if you're going for a bigger interview, or what if you're making a big pitch, or what are the skills that you actually need to be able to function at a very, very high level? I love public speaking and dealing with, that people talk about. It's one of the scariest things that you could do. So all the things that are fear-based, that people either stay away from or they avoid, I like to help people. Well, let's just turn around and take a look and see how we can transform a lot of these old beliefs and old systems into something that actually clicks and works. And so many twists and turns, but mastering pressure. I started out actually creating a tennis program with my husband, who's a tennis coach. It's called Tennis to the Max. And now that the Olympics are here in this current time that we're on, there's a lot to talk about these athletes, and particularly the mental health stuff and what's going on. So it's all interrelated, actually deal under a tremendous amount of pressure so that we can really hold on to ourselves, and the body is quiet, so the mind is clear. That's all.
Right. I love it. Well, you've written a great book. Show us your book. It's called Mastery Under Pressure. And it's a quick read, folks, but there's a lot of great exercises in there. And I was sharing with Tina before the program, I typically do read the books, but I skim them more than really absorb them. And I'm definitely going to have to go back on several sections, especially the one that's on focus, and follow the exercises that you have. But, it was interesting when I was reading it, and you just mentioned this, I'm reading your book, and two words came into my mind: Simone Biles. And, you talk about someone who was under incredible pressure, and she chose to say enough, or maybe not enough, maybe pause. I think she's still kind of working through some of these things, but it's been interesting to listen to a lot of the dialogue that has gone on around this. I mean, clearly it has, first we had the young tennis pro who said, I'm not going to do this. And we've had some other people, but I think Simone Biles is clearly one of the most well-known people who has really brought this out. And she stopped, not because of an injury. And it was funny because everybody immediately, oh my gosh, what happened to her? She was like, no, I am not in the place mentally that I need to be And so it's not going to work. And, we've had people who have said, oh, she let down her team. She let down the United States. And, I'll be honest, there is a tiny little bit of that there. But I'm always one of these people that I say, anytime you have a team sport and you're relying on one person, you're asking for trouble. I mean, because things happen, ankles get turned, all sorts of things. So, but more importantly, she was showing everyone that it is okay to say, wait a minute, I need to step back. So talk to us more about that. I mean, because it can happen to anybody. And I don't care if you're, a world-class athlete, or you've got your business and you're working out of your home office. Those pressures are definitely just unbelievable and are real. So talk to us more about that.
So I just wrote a blog that's going to be probably go up in the next day or two, exactly, because, given my field and given my interests, it's right up my alley. So I have a lot of things to think about that I think about with it. Number one, she is a master, not only at the gymnastic part, she's also a master mentally, because you cannot be an Olympic level athlete without mind. You just can't. And one of the things that I say all the time is an athlete would never go out there without training the mind. And yet we look at ourselves, how many people have actually trained at the level that she's trained, the mind. And then we expect ourselves to be able to perform at incredibly high levels. Now, even at the highest level, what I love about this is she's and Naomi Osaka, and it was Phelps before. I used to live in New York, and his pictures all over the subway, talking about therapy and suicide prevention and all of this. We're all human. Nobody escapes. Right. Nobody escapes. And so there are signs and signals. And again, a big one part of my, passions is get to know yourself really well, really, really, really well, because there are signs. There are signs that are letting you know that you have reached your limits. And in the blog that I wrote, and I just read the proof of it, I kind of list them. We can't focus. We don't want to get out of bed in the morning. Our relationships are kind of falling apart. I mean, there's just so many signs and signals. We're getting sick. I can't sleep. All of these things. Well, if we don't pay attention to them and we power through them, she decided not to power through. Right. Because the risk of severe injury was so great for her. Right. There's nobody spotting her. There's nobody holding her. There's nobody. So she was calculating, I'm sure, for herself, this is not safe. Right. Right. So she's setting a model that I'm so thrilled that mental health is now out there in the forefront, because what I would say, particularly in business, and I've been doing this for a long time, and I worked with a lot of really high-powered people, and we talk about bringing somebody like me into their teams. It's like, well, what you do, it's really important, but it's not urgent. Right. Yeah. Then they make the face, right? They squinch their little nose up and they go, me. But with COVID, and with all of this publicity, this is important and urgent. And we start with ourselves. As we become healthier and know how to manage these things, and then impacting other people, and we're impacting people who are parents of children. That's really kind of my whole goal here, in terms of doing the work that I do, is how many people can we impact? Because in my belief, this is the path to world peace. Right. I just, this stands out so much in my mind. The other day, I was in Denver visiting my grandson, who I haven't seen in a year, who's 4 years old. And I'm very proud of my son, the way he's raising him. His mother and his father, they're very savvy in the way that, and he's very polite. And so my son and I were in the supermarket, and there was a young mother on the phone grabbing her kid, probably around the same age as my grandson, and kind of cursing, come on, and nasty and cursing. Oh, and it just pained you. it's like, how does this kid even have a chance? How does he even have a chance? And so I feel, again, it's my opinion, that as leaders, it's our responsibility to be able to manage ourselves in a way that we don't bark at people, that we offend people, that we, out of our own anger and frustration and annoyance, and there are skills that we can, so that we can, again, be calm in an emergency and keep our minds really, really clear.
Right.
And knowing when our limits are and saying, I need a break.
Right. And, maybe it's just that you leave that situation, you go to the restroom, you take a walk. I mean, there's all sorts of things that you can do. And, it was interesting as you were talking, because I was thinking, as leaders, we do have that responsibility for our employees, for, whatever it is, maybe it's just the people around us, all those things. Many years ago, I worked for a man, and he was over 300 pounds. So, physically he was not healthy. You knew his blood pressure probably just blew the cuff up. I mean, there, and I mean, he was literally what you would call a walking heart attack. We were just waiting for that, but his anger just simmered. I mean, it was, the tiniest little thing would set it off, and we would run. And it was interesting because I was fairly young when I worked for him. I was in my 20s, but I was raised by a very independent woman. My parents were great, but my dad worked a lot. So my mom was the key figure in my life. And so she raised me to, stand up for myself. And I went into him, and I've been there not real long. And I said, I see how you are with people. And I was his office manager. So basically I was, pretty much in charge of everything. And I said, you get one. And he said, one. And I said, you get to call me a foul name once. You do it a second time, and I own your business. And, and he just kind of looked at me and, there came a point where he called me the B word. And and all I did, I just looked at him and I said, that was your one. And he immediately backed down. I mean, he knew that I would not. Now, I didn't last long there. I mean, because the stress level was just so incredible. I mean, we really were worried about, would he throw things at us? Would he just scream and yell? Would he keel over dead? And then we'd fight over, who had to give him CPR. But it was just such a horrible situation. And he, I kept thinking the whole time, he just needs to chill out, and that really was a big part of it. He needed to recognize how destructive his behavior was, not only to himself, but to everyone around him.
Yes, absolutely. And so you were one of those great employees who stood up to him and let him know that you were not willing to take that,
right,
and that you were not afraid to leave. And maybe, again, people get into all kinds of situations. Again, it showed us so much of how many people had to stay and work under really toxic situations because the consequences were worse.
Right.
Than,
yeah. And I mean, we see that a lot, obviously, in abuse cases where, financially, or, there's children. I mean, there's so many reasons why women feel that they cannot leave, and so, I mean, that's just, it's just so scary that happens.
So the goal would be, how can we educate as many people as we possibly can? And the reason that I really like the business arena is because I like business, for one thing, but we touch so many people in so many different kinds of situations. And if work can be that kind of culture, where you can come in and you can feel, admired and appreciated, and that you have some autonomy, and you feel good about you, and you feel good about the purpose of what you're doing there, that then again leads over to every aspect of somebody's life.
Right. And it's funny because some of the things that we end up scoffing at are the things that would help the most, and some of them are simple and basic, like, what is the mission of the company? If it's okay, we understand they need to make money. No money, no company. So, so that is always there. But, for companies that, really have a mission to provide, Walmart, I think, is one of the best examples of this. A lot of people aren't fans of Walmart, but their mission is to provide products for people who might not be able to afford them somewhere else. I mean, they have it worded much, much better, but that's their overriding goal. And so then when an employee knows that and recognizes it, and more importantly, sees that that is what they're doing, because you can't just walk the walk, or talk the talk or whatever. You have to be doing both. And so that's kind of where it starts is, from the top, obviously top down, what is important to the company, and then communicate that with the people that you're working with.
Absolutely. And again, I've got another blog that says, what do you want to trickle down? Because it is all trickle down from the top.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. And again, we understand companies have to make money, but, there are certainly ways that we can be doing things. And there's a variety of things in the companies. Do they have a philanthropic program? Do they recycle? I mean, there's just so many things, but more importantly, do they make their employees feel valued? Do they, it was really funny. Years ago, I worked for a very large company. At that point, it was, I believe, the 7th largest corporation in the world. And, and I worked for one of the subsidiaries, and I reported directly to the CEO, who was this wonderful man. And we had badges, we had stinking badges to get into the buildings, and it had our picture on them and our name. And he tells me now, I was the head of communications, and he said, I want every name badge to be redone, so everybody's first name is great big. And I went, okay. I mean, he was the CEO. I was going to do that. And he said, no. I know how important it is. Now, mind you, this is over 20 years ago. I know how important it is to call somebody by their first name. I need to be able to see that from 6 feet away. And people were just dumbfounded when this gentleman would call them by their first name. They never got that, it was because it was really big on their ID, but it really made a difference. They're like, the CEO knew my name. And I mean, that was just such a small gesture, but it made such a huge difference.
So the way that it is now, and it hasn't been this way, and probably 20 years ago, that CEO had many, many layers between him and anybody else who wanted to get.
It was a big company.
Right? But today, the employees want to see their CEO. They want to see them. They want them to be accessible. They want them to be transparent.
Right.
They want them to be authentic. And I always say it's easier said than done, because as a leader, we frequently don't want to show our vulnerabilities, right? So there's, again, a fine line of how somebody can do that to be really authentic and be there, at the same time not coming to crying to the employees that, wow, this job really.
Right. Yeah. You can't be telling the employees, oh my God.
So I always say that being a great leader, or being a leader, you have about as much room as a crease on a pair of pants. Because in group dynamics, every group wants a leader. Every group wants to kill the leader off.
Right. They might not want to be the leader, but.
Right. So as soon as a leader gets too strong, then they get scapegoated and then start talking. And so it really is an art to, and I don't know another way to be a great leader other than knowing yourself and knowing what you put out.
Right.
Level of presence that you have amongst, and all of these things that are just so critical for somebody to own and know themselves deeply and how they come across to other people. I always say that everybody knows your blind spots, but you want to know them too.
Right. And you need to know them first.
Yes. So that you can start, there's that pattern that I do again. Here it shows up because there's only so many patterns. And each of us have a couple of them that once we handle them and recognize them in all their kind of hidden ways, and then we can say, oh, there it is again. I better keep my mouth shut, or there it is again, or I've come on too strong, or I'm annoyed that this person is not moving as fast as I move. Any one of these things that behavior kind of traits that we have, that we can recognize and then choose how we respond, right?
Right.
So the difference between what you were describing of that gentleman as the reaction, it's just reactive, and understanding I'm having this reaction, and yet I'm going to choose my words very carefully.
Right.
That should be all of your life.
Yeah. And you talk about that in your book as to how to recognize those things. And it's not, that you sit down and go, oh, hey, this, I mean, it is a process. And obviously, going through some of these things, you might discover, or you might already know, that you truly need assistance with some of these things. And so, we want to encourage people, if there's something, huge, and I shouldn't even use that word, if there's something that's very important to you, that is an issue, then it's okay to seek help. So because huge to one person is tiny to somebody else, right?
I want to even interject a little something and put a little spin on it. So we're talking about all these great athletes and Olympians. They all have coaches.
Right. Nobody gets there by themselves.
Nobody gets there by themselves. So in my belief system, you always want to work with somebody who's a little bit ahead of you. So let's just say that you're just starting out, and now you're working with somebody who's a coach or a mentor, or somebody who's had a business that you would love to have, that has maybe 100 employees, and you're just starting out with 0 or 1, and then you get to the point, well, now you've got the 100 employees, but this person doesn't have that level of experience,
right?
So now we want to upgrade into the next level, who to 1,000, employees. And so there's the business side of it. And then there's, again, the emotional, mental side. And I don't know if anybody ever saw Billions, the show Billions, which is kind of a crass guy from Wall Street. But he has a woman who is a psychologist and a performance coach. And as soon as he gets himself into a little trouble, or he's trying to make a really big decision, or he needs somebody that he can trust, he calls on this woman. And that's the model, in my opinion, that all great leaders need. They need somebody who's a trusted advisor, that they can let their hair down and really talk about their vulnerabilities, that they don't have to spread it all over the company. And somebody helping them who's got wisdom and experience that can help to just be a good sounding board.
Right.
Did you look at it like this? And did you look at it like that? And yeah, I see that pattern showing up here. Are you aware of it? And then how does it show up? I have one somebody who's in the C-suite I'm working with now, who he said, I'm just going to tell you this, nobody knows it. And he said, I can take criticism or feedback. He said, but inside it kills me. Just really kills me. So nobody really knows. He said, although sometimes I get a little short, and I don't want to do that. And so we started to track back. Okay, so what is this experience?
Right.
Is this familiar? And he had very, very high performing, high standard parents. So you got the 99. Well, how come you didn't get the 100? You had this, but you didn't get that. So he had learned to put so much pressure on himself, that perfection, which none of us are perfect. That anytime somebody would call it into question, his solutions or the way he would approach something, he would experience that same experience.
Right. He was the little boy, and mom was mad or disappointed.
Exactly. So again, that's not something that you're going to discuss with your employees.
Right. It's not appropriate.
It's not appropriate. And yet it's a problem. It's an issue. So that if you can manage that, well, then you can now take in what people have to say, and you don't suffer.
Right.
That was the whole point. So he reports to me now. He said, do I ever like being wrong? No. but he said I could hear it and I could feel again that my body did not go into that response.
Right.
Through the work that we did.
And you're so right in the body reaction. I mean, we tense up, we close off, the whole body language thing. And then immediately whoever you're talking to knows, obviously there are people who want to get that reaction out of you for whatever reason. But there are also those who recognize, danger. And so having that trusted person who is the unbiased person who can say, hey, do you know that when you get upset, this is what happens. You tense up, you lean back, you start making fists. I mean, all these various things that we don't even realize we're doing.
Exactly. Exactly. So the beginning part of it's really the way of transformation. And a lot of times people think, well, I don't want to really do this work. I don't want to go back to early stuff. I don't want to that kind of pain. I don't want to do this. And what we actually discover is there isn't anything that you don't already know about yourself. And it's just a bit of an uncovering. You say, oh yeah, I remember that. And the way that memory gets laid down is one memory triggers another memory that triggers another. So we only need to get into one sensation of a particular experience. And the bigger mind will then make a lot of the connections for us.
Right.
I remember that. That's now we've got a depth of understanding, because people wouldn't talk to their worst enemy a lot of times the way they talk to themselves.
Oh yeah. Oh, we say horrible things to ourselves.
Horrible things to ourselves. So therefore, when you do that, all you're doing is repeating the horrible things that were said to you. And it takes you down, this nasty spiral. So I have a thing about, I call it productive thinking instead of positive thinking. I think of positive thinking and thinking, oh, everything's so wonderful.
Right. Yeah. We're going to be Miss Pollyanna today.
But inside, I'm not feeling it. The insides, that if we don't buy it, then it's not going to happen. We will find some way to sabotage. So again, having permission to be able to help somebody get inside what is this really about? And can I change my thoughts? Something that produces something useful for me. So I have a choice. Once I have this level of awareness, awareness is the first part. You can't change anything again. Business, and you've got a sheet of data, and you're analyzing the data. You don't know what's working, what's not working. To analyze it. Well, it's the same thing with our personal.
Yeah, I mean, we do that with our business. Why not do it with ourselves?
How did I get here? How did I get to this place? What was I thinking? What was I thinking that brought me to the situation where I blew up at somebody? Just as an example. Okay, so now I get it. I was really doing fine, and then I got a call from one of my kids. Dad, where are you? I thought you were coming to my soccer game here, and
then that little voice went bing.
but unconsciously, again, it registered, and then you went back to your work. But now there's some little nugget back there.
Yeah, that little guilt bug is in there going, you're a horrible parent.
Right. But again, if I don't take the time to even acknowledge how I feel about it, the next person that comes along, I may just be really short-tempered and, kind of take it out on that person.
Right.
So I like to say, do my thoughts produce something useful for me? I'm noticing that I'm feeling this way. I realize that I kind of fell short. I might even go back and apologize to that person. Might even do that.
Right.
Sorry that I jumped at you.
Yeah. And just say, this was going on over here. And you don't even have to say why. You can just say, I'm sorry, I was distracted. And I took it out on you. I'm terribly sorry.
Right. And then you go home and you deal with your kid.
Right.
And that's how, when we, when we look at things and we don't run away from them, it gives us knowledge and power.
Right.
personal power. That's
Mhm.
really where personal power sits. I get to choose
Mhm.
how I respond.
Mhm. Right. One of the things that I've been talking with several of my guests about is, especially for women, the imposter syndrome. And there's so many of the things that fall into this, the we're not worthy. We shouldn't be here. Why are we even trying this? We're not smart enough. We're not good enough. I mean, all of these various things. And we've talked ourselves out of it before we ever even get there. And it is hard because one of the things that I think is that many times when those little voices started, it was somebody who meant to do good, or they were trying to protect you, but then you internalized it and all of these things. And so maybe it was just something as simple as a teacher saying, girls aren't as good in math as boys.
Mhm.
And she or he was just trying to convince us, go into something else, and so they weren't trying to be mean. They weren't, but at the same point, that little voice started in our heads and then has gone ever since then. I'm not good enough, and all these various things. And of course, this happens to young men too, where they're told, you're not handsome enough, you're not smart enough, all of these various things that they're told. And sometimes I think it's even harder on them because they have the additional pressures of they have to be the breadwinner, they have to do this, and those pressures are just incredible.
Yes. All of the above.
Okay, end of the show. No.
So let's just talk about it for a little bit. Number one, we need to recognize that voice is going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's there. It's not there. Good or bad. It's just there.
Well, it doesn't help us.
Right.
Yeah. Does that thought produce something useful for me? That would be my first line of defense when I realize how I'm talking to myself. And then, is it true? Is it really true?
Right. Am I really not good at math?
Maybe I'm not. Okay. So if I'm not, that's okay. But maybe I'm. But it's, again, when you're moving up in the world, particularly if you're an entrepreneur, or you're pushing towards becoming something that's bigger than even imagine. We have to grow into ourselves. All of us have tremendous amount of potential from the time that we're born. And given a lot of the life circumstances and so on, and the opportunities that come our way, we have opportunities to really kind of expand on this potential. So let's just say that we have this dream that we want to be, I don't know, a doctor. It's just a simple, I want to be a doctor. And do I have the skill? Aptitude is actually, it's not the skill yet. Do I have the aptitude to be a doctor?
Right. So you mentioned you didn't like blood.
I like helping people, but that was not going to be for me. So it's being honest with yourself, and really good mental health is really about how can we witness ourselves. So many times you've heard me say, I kind of stand back and look at myself and become aware, and how am I thinking? And this is all from an objective point of view. When we get into this imposter syndrome stuff, and that's not objective. Right. It's irrational. Or if it's rational, let's name it. Right. I was a very, very, very good student, but in geometry, I could never see.
Those lines didn't line up.
Oh, they lined up, but they never emerged as shapes. So my brain not make those three-dimensional pictures.
Right.
So all A's and B's, mostly A's, but a D in geometry.
Oh no.
It was bad. So then I got the idea that I wasn't good in math.
Right. Because geometry is math.
That's right, but it actually wasn't true. I was very good in algebra, and I was very good in trigonometry because it spoke to my brain the way that I think. So again, we come back to this point of self-knowledge, self-awareness, right? And now I can witness, I can see, I may be in a problem, but I can also notice that I'm outside of the problem. this is the key. It's called the witness or third eye, or where you have that objectivity. I'm sitting in a let's say I'm sitting in a meeting or a conference, and I'm getting bored to tears. And somebody, is talking about stuff that I just want them to shut up.
Right.
Basically. All right. So this is what I'm thinking and feeling within myself. Right. At the same time, I'm in the situation and I'm feeling it, but I'm not acting on it. I'm not telling that woman.
Right. Enough.
Yeah. Right. Or I may decide to do that and say, because I'm noticing how I'm feeling, and then I'm choosing to take action on it. So it's really this third eye, and we get into a lot of trouble when we don't witness our own behavior and our own feelings. And when we can do that, and we can recognize very quickly, okay, this is what was a couple minutes ago, this is what is right now. I can flip, I can change, I can shift. And we become very agile in our minds. And that's really kind of where we want to go.
Right. And I think one of the most important things that I got from reading your book is it's our choice. We can choose to be annoyed that person is droning on and on and on, or we can choose to think, okay, she really does have great information that I need to be paying attention to, or, all these various things. It truly is our choice on how we react. And I think one of the things that we see a lot of is the whole, I'm going to blame somebody else. And, there's obviously many, many reasons for that. But, it comes back to, it is our choice.
Well, as soon as we get into the blame game, we're done.
Right.
We're just done. Because there's a wonderful saying that I learned a long time ago, and I do believe that this is very true. We create our own reality, create our own experience. And part of being very, very self-aware is recognizing that it's my perception that is causing me to feel this way. Use the example, a lot of times, let's just say that I'm scared of dogs. If I see a dog in my periphery vision, my body goes into that stress response. Right. The body gets triggered before the mind. I'm walking with you, Deb, and you love dogs.
Right.
And you go over and you're petting it and you're petting it. Okay, same dog, different experience. So we create our own reality. And when we can accept that, things go bad or poorly. I have a client who's in a business that he's in the music business. It's not a very good business as businesses go. Kind of bastardized and taken over and big money. And so at the same time, it makes him very angry that he's not respected for all his skill, because people are going into, doing their own electronic music, and he just got this. And so, he spends a lot of time. Is it me? Or is it the business? Or is it both of us? And until we can find ourselves in there, say it's an industry that is very, very difficult to actually make a living in. Do I want to stay there?
Right.
Even though I have the passion for it, or is it me that I have expectations that are unrealistic, and I'm the one that needs to change?
Right.
And, yeah.
And we do get so vested in those decisions that we have made, whether it's, that maybe it's personal, I've been in this marriage forever, or I've had this friend forever, or this job forever, or, I studied for this, all these various things, I trained as an Olympic athlete, and, and I mean, I can't imagine someone who went through everything that Simone Biles has gone through to get to where she is today, to have the courage to say, no, because I mean, everything she was doing was building up to that, but she knew I need to take a step back. Now, who knows what's going to happen from here on, but we get so vested in what we have done, what we have been. One of the other things that I heard through this was Michael Phelps. He was saying, when he retired, and he came out of retirement a couple of times. I mean, when you're that young, you kind of, it is truly, I mean, you see these Olympians who are teenagers, and I'm like, oh, good golly. But he said when he was no longer a swimmer, what was he? And he said, he truly thought there's no me. That was what my entire identity was. And fortunately, he has found other things. But we see that so many times with, maybe it's, I was mom and my kids grew up, and I'm no longer that caregiver. I mean, we get so tied to those roles that we don't realize there's a next step, but we have to choose to take it.
That's right. And when we make those choices to delve into, I have my youngest son was a soccer player.
Mm-hmm.
That was his passion, and he had the talent.
Mm-hmm.
going.
Mm-hmm.
He could have been very realistically, on the national team or on a professional soccer team.
Mm-hmm.
Got to college, and he went to Brown, and he felt like he was like a piece of meat, something that the school was going to make a lot of money on.
Mm-hmm.
And he got interested in theater and literature, and trust me, his sophomore year was very, very, because when he was a freshman, he was the big man on campus.
Mm-hmm. Right. He was the soccer star. Mm-hmm.
He was a star.
Mm-hmm.
And he went through his own period of adjustment and, searching and who am I? And so these things are so important.
Mm-hmm.
They're so important in terms of really understanding the choices that we make, the ramifications, the consequences that our choices have. And again, I've said it once, even on this hour about 1,000 times, getting to know yourself
right
at a deep level, and being curious about who you are, and what makes me tick, and what gets me excited, and what really kind of turns me off. What do I stand for, and who do I stand for? And it will raise not only the level of your organization, but it'll raise all of us up. That boat that we all,
that boat rises when we do. And it's interesting because I work with a lot of business owners who are just starting out, or maybe and one of the biggest problems that I see that they have, and I fell under this too, was I must, I'm doing this, so I must be able to do it all. I can't ask for help. I can't, I can't figure out how to do my own website. I can't figure out how to do my own taxes, and it's perfectly fine. I tell people, I'm sorry, I wouldn't try and do open heart surgery on myself by watching YouTube videos. It's okay to ask for help. And that comes back to having that trusted person, or, maybe it is just the CPA or whatever. It's perfectly fine to say, I need help with this. I'm not an expert in it.
Well, I have a really close friend who has her favorite saying, and it's become my favorite saying: if it's not your genius, it's not your job.
Mm-hmm.
And again, the person who's just starting out is going to say, well, I don't have the money to pay for somebody else to do this.
Right.
Lots of different ways that you can trade with people. Somebody's going to want your services. You're going to want their services. Starting sometimes with interns and just finding ways that you can find people who have a similar vision that you do, and that you can support one another. Because the truth is, what I've learned is that to scale a business, to make it as big as you might dream it could be, to think that you're going to do it by yourself is a myth.
Right. And it doesn't matter. Maybe you're that one man band. I mean, like me, I mean, I'm my product, but I still need people to support me.
Yeah, always. My father never wanted any employees. He had one employee, a woman, kept his books, and he did everything himself,
Mhm.
everything else himself. And that's the way that he chose
Mhm.
at that level to keep his business. He never wanted it to get any
Mhm.
bigger than it was.
Right.
For computers, you know, he has to see somebody to do his taxes
Mhm.
or did the administrative stuff. And that was it.
Mhm.
And he had a very nice living, and he was, you know, kind of very content, and he raised us very well.
Mhm.
Other people may have bigger dreams
Mhm.
than he had for a business.
Mhm.
So we have to scale ourselves up
Right.
and always be in reality about what can I do
Mhm.
and what can't I do.
Right. You know, you talk about fears in your book, and one of the ones, and I don't remember if this was in there or not, but the fear of success. You know, the what if
Yes.
I'm good at this. You know, and I think that's one of those things that people, you know, it seems like a really silly fear, but a lot of, you know, and maybe it's just, you know, what if I'm in so demand as a speaker that I'm traveling too much? Or what, you know, the what ifs, or the, you know, the whole big things, those are the bugaboos that really get us, right? But you know, that's where then you go, okay, so this is great, this is fabulous, but here's the boundaries I'm going to have. You know, I mean, we see movie stars do this all the time, where they do not travel, they only travel X number of weeks, or something like that, because they want to be with their family. Business people can do that too, you know, and if you have to turn down business, well, that again, that was your choice. You're
And
either choosing to be one or choosing to do the other.
I did that while I was raising my children,
Mm-hmm.
three children, and I worked 3 days a week,
Mm-hmm.
20 hours a week,
Mm-hmm.
and I never went over the 20 hours.
Yep.
And that was that's
Mm-hmm.
how I could live with me.
Mm-hmm.
Because I chose to have these children.
Right. Right.
Nobody made me have them.
Mm-hmm.
I love being a mom,
Mm-hmm.
and I love being a part of their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And I love my work. And so I worked again for years part-time. Mm-hmm. And my mother used to say to me all the time, because I had very big dreams. Mm-hmm. And now that I don't have, I'm raising those kids anymore, mm-hmm. I'm able to do more of the things that mm-hmm. Because I always had an idea. I always had a question, Deb, that it was like, what would it look like if I actually lived my potential? Mm. And that was an underlying question while mm-hmm. I was with my kids and keeping my world relatively small, mm-hmm. So that I could handle that. And mm-hmm. then my mom used to say to me, oh, for everything, there's a season. Mm-hmm. And once the kids were gone and I actually got divorced and mm-hmm. moved to Manhattan, mm-hmm. and I said, okay, this is it. And I started finding people and women that were doing like amazing things and writing books and, mm-hmm. and doing all the things that I had dreamt to do. And I just started doing it. Mm-hmm. And so again, when you come into that imposter syndrome idea, mm-hmm. is like, okay, how many years I've been doing this? I've been doing this for a pretty long time. Mm-hmm. You think that do I need any more schooling to do this? Well, I love to learn, but mm-hmm. I don't know that I need to go back to school to do what
right. Mm-hmm.
And you start playing, you know, these mm-hmm. two ends against each other, and you start being realistic, mm-hmm. And having people along the way that believe in you, mm-hmm. support you, and give you the freedom, and you give yourselves the freedom mm-hmm. to grow.
Right. You know, and it is about who you surround yourself with. I mean, you know, when you were home raising your kids, there were probably people who said, you're only working 20 hours a week? No, you should be working 40 hours a week. What's wrong with you? You know, and so you just don't have those people. And sometimes those people, you kind of get stuck with them. I mean, you know, you can't always get rid of some, but in many cases you can choose to not associate as much with them. You know, I had, and just remove yourself. I mean, you know, the friend of mine the other day was saying, everything I read on Facebook is so negative and yada, 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 yada. And I said, okay, I'm not meaning to be flip here, but stop reading it. It was just, you know, and I said, that's kind of what it comes down to. You know, and I mean, if you don't like the negativity on the news, change the channel. You know, yeah, we shouldn't bury our heads completely in the sand, but we don't have to watch whatever the major network news is, you know, for 24 hours a day. Just because they offer it doesn't mean we have to watch it.
That's exactly right. Yes. So keeping your mind really like a temple is something that I started to work on a long time ago.
I like that.
And we do know that thoughts travel, very real. And even though you may not say it out loud, I'm going to pick it up in some way, shape, form, or another. And so, again, going back to how I talk to myself, how I talk to my children, mostly, you know, it's between me and me. I don't allow to come in, because I can see them coming. I can hear they're coming, and oh, what if, you know, the what ifs and this and that, you know, anything that I can kind of see ahead of time that is going to get that nervous system going into a stress response. I do my best to keep it outside of me.
Right. You know, and you talk in your book about how to do deep breathing, how to do relaxation, how to do meditation. You know, and a lot of that really is just pushing those things away. And some of them really are acknowledging it. You know, I'm kind of a klutzy person. And so, you know, there are times where if I, you know, trip over something, my little voice, either in my head or out loud, will say, God, that was stupid. But I can either fixate on that or go on. You know, and that's the thing. It's like, okay, you know, so don't do it again.
You know, I recognize that you know, body wise, I'm a little klutzy, and there it is. And
yeah, I mean, I tell people, I was having a conversation with somebody the other day. She hurt her foot, and she said something to me about, you know, have you ever broken toes? I said, yeah, I've broken 3 toes, and I said, and I have learned, I do not go barefoot. Because I don't pay attention to where I am in the world. And so I can either go barefoot and risk breaking toes or wear shoes. I mean, you know, it just comes down to that.
Right. Making those choices and where and kind of moving along in a way that feels good. We want to feel good. We want to feel good in our body.
I mean, who wants to go through life not feeling good? And that's what it comes down to. I mean, and there's enough that's out there. What we control, we need to make sure that it's not the and it's the good. That's the technical term, the Well, oh my gosh, Tina, we are already at the top of the hour, and this has been just so delightful. And you know, I would love to have you on again, because we've just scratched the surface of this, because I think there's so much that we need to talk about. But how do people find you and connect with you?
Now, there's a couple ways. I have a website. It's masteryunderpressure.com. You can see things that we're doing and the classes that we're holding. And I have a Mastery Under Pressure book and a course, which is a really pretty awesome course. But basically, if you also want to see where you are on this peak performance scale, I have a quiz that you can take.
Yeah, the Mastery Under Pressure quiz.
There you go. It's masteryunderpressure.net. And that will give you a pretty good indication of where you are on these skills that we've been talking about, to help you go from anxiety over here to performance over here. These are the things that go in there, so you can see where you are. If you want to get in touch with me, there's a way that you can do that through the quiz, and make a 30-minute consultation if you think that we've said things here that you would like to work with and go a little bit deeper.
Great. And I'm assuming that you work a lot virtually.
I think I can count on the last 7 years that I've been in California, maybe 5 times I've seen people in person.
Yeah. So. I mean, you know, that's a whole nother subject. I miss seeing people, but you know, I also like the fact that I can talk to and people around the world.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So yes, I do work virtually. I'm very used to it. I've been doing it for a long time. And actually I find it very intimate. So it's not quite so distant.
Great. I love it. I love it. Well, this really has been fabulous. And as I said, I would love to have you on again. But until then, what final thoughts would you like to leave everyone with?
One other thing, I'd love you to get in touch with me on LinkedIn. So,
oh yes, LinkedIn, of course.
So the final thing that I say, and it really is part of the mantra of my life, what's in my control, what's out of my control. As soon as I start to feel stress, and I know how that feels in my body, you know, I hit you in a different place. For me, it's my shoulders. As soon as I start to feel that, it's like, what's in my control? What's out of my control? And then I can, that vision, I can see things much more clearly, and I can choose. Okay? I can problem solve and figure it out, and then I can move on my way.
Great. I love it. Well, I've been having a delightful conversation with Tina Greenbaum, and you can find her information at masteryunderpressure.com. I am Deb Creer, and until next time, everyone have a great day.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.